The movie starts with a man running frantically in a dense forest. Someone is chasing him, and it's clear he's in big trouble. Eventually, the man is caught and killed. Who was he? Who killed him? And why? These questions will unfold as the story progresses. The next day, the focus shifts to a happy family on vacation in their RV. There's Keith, his wife Catherine, and their two kids, Amy and Jeffrey. They lived in the city, but had ventured far from the crowd to enjoy some peace. Keith was in the middle of building a house for them. Well, for everyone except Amy, who already seemed to be living in her own world of teenage rebellion. They all sat down to eat, enjoying their meal, except Amy, who seemed annoyed. Without saying a word, she left the RV. Why? To smoke? Of course. Her father, Keith, was strongly against drugs, so she had to sneak off. Smoking may not kill you immediately, but being caught by Keith might. While Amy was away, two boys appeared out of nowhere. They were locals, and from the way they looked and spoke, it was clear they weren't exactly Boy Scouts. Their names were Richard and Billy. In such stories, people like them usually spell trouble. The boys said they were looking for their older brother, Melior, who had gone missing the night before. Keith was polite to them, hoping to avoid any confrontation. "Sorry, we haven't seen anyone," he said. Meanwhile, Jeffrey, Keith's son, tried to offer Richard some chocolate to make friends. Because if there's one thing villains can't resist, it's free candy. Just then, Amy returned and Richard blushed. Why? Probably because city girls didn't come to this area often. Keith quickly told Amy to go inside, and after some awkward conversation, Richard and Billy left. The family resumed their journey in the RV, thinking the strange encounter was behind them. But trouble has a way of catching up. On the road, they ran into Richard and Billy again. This time, the boys' car was parked in the middle of the street. Richard even had a shotgun, which made Catherine panic. She urged Keith to just drive away, but he stopped. Richard walked over, all smiles, and said, "What a coincidence. Our car broke down. Can you help us?" Catherine was too scared to agree, but Keith felt he had no choice. Richard convinced him to drop him and Billy off at their house, which happened to be on the way. Reluctantly, Keith agreed, hoping for the best, and wishing he'd taken a different route, perhaps to another country. Jeffrey started playing a clever word game with Billy, but poor Billy wasn't sharp enough to keep up. When Keith asked Billy about his family, Billy said, "Well, two of my cousins live with us, along with my grandfather, my brother, and me." The film setting gave the impression that Billy's family might end up as the victims. Things took a strange turn when Billy picked up Jeffrey's notebook. Inside, Jeffrey noticed handwriting that matched Melior's, which made him suspicious. Then, out of nowhere, Jeffrey got up to choke the Billy with a wire. Oddly, the rest of the family didn't react like normal people might. They didn't panic or care much. They were only concerned about one thing, that the RV might get dirty with Billy's blood. Just like someone worried about ketchup on a white shirt instead of the mess on the floor. And here's the big twist. Keith's family isn't as innocent as they appear. The people who seemed like trouble, Billy and his group, were actually innocent. But Keith's family? They weren't just murderers. They were cannibals. Yes, they killed people and ate them too. Melior, who had gone missing the night before, was one of their victims. Later in the movie, the family is shown eating his meat for lunch. Just like a twisted cooking show where the secret ingredient is always human surprise. After that, they dismembered Billy, and as a reward, Keith gave a piece of him to his daughter, Amy. Why? Because she had controlled her anger better than Jeffrey. The family's usual approach was to target people they found on the road, loners whom no one would miss. That way, they wouldn't get caught. But today, they decided to change their method. "Let's go to their house," they said. "Let's see what's there for us." At Billy's home, his grandfather and cousins Julie and Savannah were having dinner when someone knocked on the door. Thinking it was Billy, they opened it eagerly, only to find Keith and his family standing there. Savannah and Julie were surprised. "What are you doing here?" they asked. Keith replied, "Our RV broke down and we couldn't find any other house nearby. So we came here for help. On the way, we met Billy. He told us to come here." Julie smiled and said, "Oh, you're welcome. Grand wine is the way we welcome guests." Apparently, they were used to entertaining visitors. The sight of Keith and his family would have impressed anyone. They looked harmless, friendly, and completely normal. No one suspected they were actually the killers. Just like a cat pretending to be innocent after knocking over a glass. It's all in the act. The family was ready, so everyone sat down for dinner. However, Keith's family wasn't used to ordinary meals like this and didn't enjoy it much. Still, they faked some compliments to Savannah, saying the food was great. Just like when you tell your friend their cooking is delicious while secretly wishing for pizza instead. Savannah and her family grew suspicious and asked why Billy wasn't with them. Catherine quickly explained. He said he had to find Melior. Before Keith and his children could act on their plan to end his family's story too, another character entered. Julie's husband, a big, strong man nicknamed Big Mac. He was intimidating and clearly someone you wouldn't want to mess with. Julie boasted about him, saying, Big Mac works hard all day and eats like a horse, just like a human vacuum cleaner at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Realizing they couldn't take down Big Mac easily, Keith's family decided to stay the night. After all, they weren't planning to leave until they had taken care of this family. When Amy needed to use the washroom, Savannah offered to go with her because there was an issue with the plumbing. However, the setup made it so they couldn't see each other. Julie, watching them, misinterpreted the situation and thought Amy was interested in Savannah. Savannah, suspicious at first, decided to let it go for Amy's sake. Julie then announced that Amy would stay in Savannah's room for the night, while Jeffrey got Billy's small room. Jabari wasn't thrilled about it, but played along, pretending to love the room as part of their plan. Keith and Catherine were given separate rooms. Meanwhile, we see Richard, who was still waiting for Billy to return. A deputy soon arrived and started talking to Richard. There seemed to be tension between them. The deputy offered to drop Richard home, but Richard refused, saying, Some tourists from Los Angeles were here, and I sent Billy with them. He should be back soon. The deputy eventually left, but Richard wasn't feeling well. It turned out that the chocolates Jeffrey had been handing out contained poison, something no one knew. Richard had eaten one earlier, and now the poison was starting to take effect. Just like when you eat questionable street food and realize too late it was a mistake. Unbeknownst to everyone, Richard's worsening condition hinted at the greater danger looming over his family. No one could guess how much trouble was about to unfold. At home, Catherine spoke to her husband Keith, expressing her unease. Something doesn't feel right, she said. We don't usually hunt like this. Maybe we should leave. But Keith wasn't ready to listen. These are poor people, he replied. They have no purpose in life. No one cares about them. There's no harm in killing them. Keith reassured her that Jeffrey had already given poisoned chocolates to everyone, so once the poison took effect, they could finish the job. Interestingly, Keith didn't carry a hammer because he believed it would negatively affect the children. Just like saying, let's keep this murder wholesome for the kids. He saw no issue in cutting people up and eating them, but smoking or storing them in cubes. That, in his view, was bad for children. Meanwhile, we learned that Savannah was a bright student, the best in archery, and had even gotten into college. However, she chose to stay home to take care of her sick grandfather instead of pursuing her dreams. Later, Keith had a talk with Jeffrey. Listen, son, he said. When the poison starts to work, I'll kill Big Mac. Don't get involved. You'll get your turn. Jeffrey reluctantly agreed to stay away from Big Mac for now. Soon after, Julie began vomiting, followed by Big Mac's condition worsening. The bathroom swing wasn't an option, so Big Mac had to head outside. Meanwhile, in another room, Savannah and Amy were having a heart-to-heart. They both admitted they weren't interested in boys. Amy confided, My mom's okay with it, but my dad? He's old-fashioned. I've even hidden my girlfriend, Blade, from him. He thinks she's a boy. She went on to share her dream of escaping her family and living a normal life. Savannah, unaware of how dangerous Amy's family truly was, thought they were just a quirky bunch. As the two grew closer, Jeffrey disobeyed his father and went outside, armed with a knife. His target, Big Mac. But how could a teenage boy easily kill a man named Big Mac? Just like trying to win a wrestling match against a bear. It's not going to end well. Jeffrey started attacking Big Mac with his knife. At first, Big Mac stayed calm, but as Jeffrey injured him badly, his anger flared. Big Mac could have crushed Jeffrey in one blow, but the poison was taking its toll. He started vomiting, giving Jeffrey the perfect opportunity to slit his throat. Keith entered the house. carrying an axe. He headed straight to Grandpa's room, ready to kill. But before he could, he noticed through the window that Jeffrey had killed Big Mac. This made Keith furious. In the meantime, Grandpa woke up, but Keith swiftly finished him off. Afterward, he went outside to drag Jeffrey back inside. Keith and Catherine scolded Jeffrey for disobeying them. Keith even blamed Catherine, saying, "The kids are spoiled because of you. You're not following our family traditions." Catherine brushed him off, but Keith decided to gift his son Big Mac's tongue as a twisted reward, just like giving a participation trophy at a family murder event. Meanwhile, Amy and Savannah were in a room together, growing intimate, but it was all part of Amy's plan to kill Savannah. Just as Amy was about to strike with a knife, she slipped and the knife stabbed her own leg. Savannah, shocked, asked what happened. Amy lied, saying she kept the knife for self-protection. Savannah went out to get a first aid kit, but noticed something suspicious. The RV wasn't far away as Keith's family had claimed. She also overheard Keith and Catherine talking, which made her more suspicious. After they left, she sneaked into the RV and found human organs. Horrified, Savannah realized the terrible truth. Her earlier suspicions were right. Amy's family wasn't normal. Soon after, Julie came out of the washroom and discovered Grandpa's dead body. She screamed, but Keith grabbed her and dragged her to the dining room. He told Catherine, "You have to kill her because you've changed. Prove your loyalty." Jeffrey was there too, watching. Keith made it clear he wouldn't harm his son, but Catherine had to kill Julie in front of him. Catherine hesitated, but eventually prepared to kill Julie. At that moment, an arrow flew through the air, piercing Catherine's neck. She fell to the ground dead in front of Keith and Jeffrey. Savannah had shot the arrow, showcasing her skill as we had seen earlier. Just like Robin Hood, but with more personal stakes and less married men. Amy came downstairs, saw her mother's lifeless body, and burst into tears. She blamed her father, yelling, "This is all your fault. We shouldn't have targeted these people. You chose this family." Keith tried to calm everyone, saying, "If we let Savannah live, we'll get caught. We have to finish this." Julie was tied to a chair, and Keith demanded she call her sister. When Julie refused, Keith began torturing her. Her screams echoed through the house. Meanwhile, Savannah, who had entered the house, tried to call the police. However, the call was cut off before she could finish explaining. Elsewhere, the deputy who had spoken to Richard earlier informed the sheriff about the situation, setting up a chain of events that would soon lead to justice or chaos. The sheriff didn't take the situation seriously and left the entire matter to the deputy. Meanwhile, Jeffrey became suspicious, thinking someone else was in the house. As he cautiously headed toward a room, Savannah acted quickly. She snatched Jeffrey's knife and held it to his throat. Savannah marched downstairs, dragging Jeffrey, and threatened Keith. "Let Julie go, or I'll kill your son," she yelled. But Keith, unfazed, coldly ordered Savannah to kill Jeffrey. Left with no choice, Savannah hesitated, and Keith used the moment to tie her up as well. Keith, now completely unhinged, began cooking parts of his victims like he was hosting a barbecue, just like a cooking show, but with 0 stars on Yelp. He forced his son to bring Big Mac's meat. Then, Keith cruelly cut off one of Julie's fingers. He was about to do the same to Savannah when she blurted out, "Your daughter is a lesbian and addicted to drugs. She's been hiding it from you." Keith, being old-fashioned and narrow-minded, couldn't handle the revelation. He began arguing with Amy, accusing her of going against nature. During the commotion, Savannah seized the opportunity to free herself. She struck Keith in the eye, temporarily blinding him. Amy tried to restrain Savannah, while Keith continued ranting about his injured eye. Just then, Richard burst in with a shotgun. At the same time, Jeffrey was preparing to set the house on fire. Before Richard could take a shot, Keith struck him on the head. Meanwhile, Savannah defended herself against Jeffrey in the kitchen. She grabbed a hot water pack and pressed it to his face, scalding him. Then, she ended his life by strangling him. Back in the main room, Keith managed to kill Richard, but Julie, overcome with despair, took an axe and ended her own life. Now, only 3 were left: Amy, Savannah, and Keith. However, Amy turned on Julie and killed her too. A brutal fight broke out between Amy and Savannah, during which Savannah was severely injured. Amy staggered outside, wounded but still standing. At that moment, the deputy arrived. Seeing the chaos, he mistakenly assumed Savannah was a threat. He shot her, believing Amy was in danger. Savannah fell, but deep down, Amy was relieved. She was finally free from her family. As the deputy prepared to take Amy to the hospital, she revealed her true nature. Without hesitation, Amy killed the deputy, climbed into her RV, and drove off into the sunset. Just like a road trip movie, but with a much darker playlist. With a sinister smile, Amy drove away happily, leaving behind a trail of carnage. And with that, the film came to a chilling end.